Scrambling eggs
Mm-hmm.
in America, they're yellow. Here, they're almost white.
Yeah.
They taste good.
Better.
Of course.
Yes. It tastes better than
Chickens are just running
Right.
wild. They know where they live. Nobody bothers
Well, there's
them.
them. And Kwame Traore, Kwame Bantuki, and so many of them, they did really good. Every day, on Monday, the meals are called Kwejo.
I was born on Sunday.
Oh, you have a sister. Yes. What were you thinking?
I don't know. I was thinking it was way back in the '60s, so I was throwing something out there.
Yeah. So we have Kojo, Akosia, Ya, Akosia, Kwame. Of the ancestors we've lost. We lost a lot of them. Walking from the hinterlands to get to this place, from here to the dungeons. Through the middle passage to the new world, lots of our ancestors died. A lot more died on the plantations where they took them. Sacrifices were put in place so that we would be here alive. I want us to take just 1 minute of our time to have a silent moment for the ancestors. And after the 1 minute silence, I will say, may their souls rest in perfect peace. And we shall all respond by saying, Ashe. Ashe is a Yoruba word, and that literally means so shall it be. So please, let's have a minute of silence. May the spirit of our lost ancestors rest in perfect peace. Ashe. An awareness of our past is essential to the establishment of our personalities and our identities as Africans. That's a quote from Emperor Haile Selassie. From Marcus Messiah Garvey Jr., actually borrowed by Bob Marley. Emancipate yourselves from mental slavery, none but ourselves can free our minds. On this land, among the people of Benin, Togo, and Ghana, we have this common African proverb we stated. Until the tales of the hunt is told by the lions, the hunt will always glorify the hunters. In actual circumstances, in many contexts, all I'm trying to say today is that as Africans, we are struggling to tell our own stories. We are struggling to put our narratives across. And it's not because we don't have them. We have absolutely everything it takes for us to tell our own history. But then systems tend to be fighting against our history being told. A typical example, I use the United States of America. In the United States of America, the African history, or the Black history, is called critical race theory. And ever since I heard this word, I've been asking myself, what is it about the history of my people out there that is critically racial that they don't want them to tell their stories? What is it about us that is so racial that they don't want us to know who our ancestors were or the stories of our ancestors? Each time I ask these questions, I get only three answers. The first answer was that for nearly 400 years, our ancestors were held captives. In chains and shackles, they were moved across oceans, across this land and the ocean for about 6,000, 7,000 miles away from this land. They got to a new world, into a different condition, different atmosphere. They had to work on plantations day in, day out. They survived. After slave trade came to an end, they had to go through Jim Crow, lynching, segregation, and several other systems. We stood strong through those chains and shackles and through those obstacles. Our ancestors survived, so they will leave a legacy, a history for us. You see, information, they say, is power. Once kept away from the people who are supposed to benefit from it, they are being rendered powerless. If they keep the narrative and the history away from you, how then do you get empowerment? They've realized how the ancestors were taught in those chains and shackles and surviving it. Knowing about them is going to empower us more, so they don't want that power. That way they can narrate the story to us in a way that will benefit them, not us. That way they can control us. Secondly, we live in a society full of these systems, governed by the Europeans. If I get to know my history, I teach my brothers and sisters, they go to school and they teach their friends. Because the little ones, the moment you teach them something new, they don't keep it to themselves. They go out there asking even their teachers if they know about it. So they gather their friends in the cafeteria and tell them more about this topic. They said the walls have ears. So their friends from the other group, since they don't know anything about this topic, they will pick it up. They go home and they want their parents to tell them more about it. And how much is tobacco? They paid for gold, wheat, tobacco, mirror, snaps, and all this. In other words, they don't want you to tell them that they stole from you. And that's exactly why they have to give you something in return. Less valuable. For a couple of decades trading with our people, they got to know them, live with them. But then nearer to the year 1500, in the year 1492, these people have now reached the West Indies, which is now the Caribbean. They went further on to the Americas. Massachusetts and its environs, they formed the New England. Used the natives of those lands on their various plantations, tobacco, cotton plantations. But the natives were not doing well. Then one of their people called Bartolomeo de las Casas, a Spanish, Portuguese, Roman Catholic priest, came up with a suggestion that looking at the Africans across the oceans, they are strong, a lot more stronger than the natives of the land. Go to Africa, get them to come and help you solve your problems. So they sailed across oceans. Among them was Don Diego de Azambuja and co. They came here. When they got to Africa, it was through manipulation and deceit that they started getting our ancestors into chains and shackles. When they went to the people, now Prince Henry and his people had already been here. They built those castles with dungeons at the bottom of it. They had their ships here. When they decided to move our ancestors out of this land, those ships were not reconstructed. And I asked why. Look at it from this point. If I need to trade in these ships, maybe I'm the owner of it. I want to trade in it and I needed a space to build my trading post. And I'm given this big vast land. If I want to build the trading post or the factory where I manufacture this, would I build prisons? I'm asking this because when they were given the land at Edina in Elmina, they built those castles. The structures at the bottom are there, the dungeons. The dungeons didn't come after the structure. They came with the foundation. So what was the purpose for building that? Was it for gold? Was it for ivory? Was it for pepper? Or was it for spices?
None of the above.
None of the above.
None
Why
of the
did you
above.
build that? And also, when the time came for them to move our ancestors out of the land, they moved them on in the same ships that was meant for gold, ivory, pepper, spices. Then look at the diagrams they show us. Look at the diagram, the space that the ancestors were arranged in. Do you think we can move gold at that amount of space without the ship sinking?
Thank you.
Do you think the ship will even make it close to the
Thank
European
you.
continent? Impossible. And so when I asked this in the question map, I asked this question in the class, my professor actually took my attention somewhere else. And he gave me that topic based on what I was looking for. So he told me to read on the sub-Saharan Arab slave trade. Nearly 700 years before the arrival of the Europeans here, Africans were victims to slavery and they were captured through the Saharan desert into this Arab world. They helped them build their nation. He believed that after reading this book, I would come into a conclusion. And the conclusion I came to was that before the Europeans sailed here, they studied the Arab slave trade long before coming, so they knew why they were coming here. Their purpose was for the men and women. But when they got here, communication became a barrier. And so they needed to trade without to know the system. After knowing the system, that was when the message got to them. And so whilst they were here, they got to know the chiefs. When the message got to them, they were able to go to them. Communication links have been created. I can come to you, tell you that, oh, look, after being here for about 5 decades, the victims of wars that you have now, among them are warriors who lost the battle. They are still angry for losing those lands to you. They would want to take their land back. If they get to know more about your strengths and weaknesses, they will fight you and there is nothing you can do. Let me help you. I want to help you, but then I have also a proposal. If I give you guns and gunpowder to fight your battles, you have to pay me back. The payment proposed for was for the victims of war to be given so that they can go in and work for them out there in the new world. At this point, I call my own ancestors naive because they believe strangers over their own people. Gave the victims of war out, took the guns and gunpowder in return. This is where they will always say we sold each other. And I believe with you. Oh, yeah. You see, in a transaction, we have 3 things. I believe these 3 things, after executed, you have successfully sold. And that, we have proposal, we have agreement, and we have exchange. When they proposed the idea that we will provide you guns and gunpowder to protect your land, and in return you give us the victims of wars, you bought into it. You agreed to the terms and conditions. Now you gave them the victims of wars, took the guns and gunpowder in return, the exchange. Everything has been executed, so you can never say you never paid people. For a couple of decades, other greedy ones were also engaging themselves in the trade, sending their warriors out there, fighting the battles, and then they'll bring in the war victims, trade them for the guns and gunpowders and all this stuff, and they'll take them away. But then demand started growing gradually to the highest peak. And that was when we had the Dutch, the Danish, the Spanish, the British, the French sailing across coasts to this land. When they came here, they had to fight people. The Portuguese were the first here, so then they want them to come to them so that they can lead them to the people. But the other group of Europeans don't want that. They want a first-hand dealing with the people, so they had to fight their way through. For nearly 130 years, the British took over in the year 1651, and then they introduced raiding, kidnapping, ambushing, burning homes, forcing families into chains and shackles. They were made to walk for so many miles. A historian here in Ghana, called Akosia Adoma Pebi, professor of the University of Ghana, Legon, in her book entitled The History of Indigenous Slavery in Ghana from the 15th century to the 19th century, she made so many awareness, gave us so many details. In that book, she stated that many slave markets were used. Among many, from Benin to Gambia, Gold Coast, Ghana had about 63 slave markets. We have Salaga, Sampa, Janani, Ketekrache, Bono Manso, Techiman, Picoro, Assin Manso, the dungeon at Cape Coast, Elmina, Fort Amsterdam, Fort Williams, all the way to the Christian dungeon in Osu, Accra. Just to mention, but a few were all being used. There was this particular British historian, his name W.E. Ward, in his book entitled The Short History of Gold Coast, when he was traveling during that same era, he kept that journal, stating that all the slave markets I've mentioned were functional. 2 of them were playing historical roles. We have here Assin Manso and that of the Salaga slave market. The distance between the 2 slave markets is over 400 miles, a journey of over 653 kilometers. You see, that's not all. Not all of our ancestors were captured from this territory. They crossed the borders of Gold Coast in the northern part of Ghana into Burkina Faso. They went further on to Mali, Niger. All the ones who were captured from there were either brought through this place or through Ivory Coast to go to the coastal belt. For those who came through this place, they had already done 400 miles or multiples of that before getting into this nation. So when they got to Salaga, they were given food to eat. The food was to withstand them the journey down south. After giving them the food, they continued the journey. They went through the Mole National Park and nature reserve full of wild animals. In order for our ancestors to walk freely through those parks, many of them were being used as sacrifices. Right? The captors realized the animals were attacking them, so they needed to protect themselves. And then they are commodities. So then they will go into the chains and shackles. Anyone who shows signs of weakness is pulled out. They walk you for a couple of meters, have you tied to trees. Their backs were whipped, the blood that oozed out of them got the animals attracted, and while the animals were feeding on them, they moved the rest out of the park. They used those people as bait. Continued the journey, met the river called the Pra River, so huge and fast flowing. The ancestors couldn't cross that part of the river because the chains on them were weighing them down, and they were also weak when they got there. So then, so many of them got drowned, and they were buried just at the bank of the river. All those who got drowned there were all buried. They continued their journey, met so many obstacles. The women in the chains and shackles were crying. Look at the journey along. They went through their monthly cycles and several other obstacles. Whenever they were crying, the people thought they were trying to give away their location, so they were shutting them up. Using the stones and metal bars, they would pour stones into their mouth and then had it tied around their neck. If they wouldn't use that, they would gather leaves into their mouth and cover it up with a metal bars. That way, you are allowed to shed tears, but then nobody hears your voice. They got here so hungry, dirty, skinny, and very, very tired. It was here that they saw the need for them to be fed, not because they were hungry, but because they were looking too skinny. No buyer wants such a person. While they were feeding them, they were looking at the men, all those men with their hairs and beards bushy. They had to shave them off with broken bottles and knives. After that was done, they went ahead to force their mouth open with the device called speculum oris. They were able to get to visibility to their teeth and all that, so they could count that and then know how old they were. At 15 years, you should have about 32 teeth in your mouth. If you have less, it means you are young. They will never take more than necessary age. Whilst that was done, they had to sort them out and then took them on a walk to their river to take their path. Before we head towards the river, right here we have the ancestral graveyard. In this graveyard, we have the remains of Madame Crystal from Kingston, Jamaica, Samuel Carson from New York City, United States. The last one was brought back from Barbados by the Prime Minister of Barbados, Her Excellency Mia Hammond. In the year 1998, the two remains were brought back, Crystal and Samuel. Crystal was a native from this land. She was taken a captive all across to the Caribbean. In Jamaica, they arrived and she wouldn't eat anything. Embarking on a hunger strike, she was caught in the act. They needed to force her to eat, so they used the chisel and hammer method. Her jaws were closed, so they broke the teeth. Placed the funnel, they dished the food into the funnel. With the help of water, they pushed it down the throat. That way, she stayed alive for them not to lose their money. She was a strong woman. Each time she is forced to eat, she waits quietly. After they have all left, she forced their hands into the throat and throws everything up, continued and died in the process. Her dying wish was to be brought back to the motherland. After centuries of preserving the remains of Crystal, they flew it back in 1998, together with Samuel Carson. Carson was one of the very first group of African Americans to serve in the U.S. Navy. He died, wasn't given a befitting burial. His nephew Sonny Carson decided to bring the remains of his uncle back home. So then, in 1998, he flew the balloons. The remains were coming, and then they heard the message of Crystal. So they went to Jamaica and picked Crystal's remains too. They got to the airport at Accra, and when they got there, they picked them on a bus. On their way to the dungeon at Cape Coast, they got to the town called Abanzi. The youth told the leaders that none of these ancestors were moved on buses, nor were they in an airplane, so they blocked the road. They told the ancestors they should have shipped their remains back home the same way they left. So now let's complete the cycle. They gave them a boat, they put the remains on it, then they moved them across the ocean. They got to the Cape Coast dungeon, and there was this big door there called Door of No Return. It simply means when you move through that door, there is no hope of you returning back home. The ancestors who walked through that door paused for a minute, looked back. And that particular action simply means that we shall be back home one day. That one day has never seen them. They have never seen it alive. But then today, they are right here in front of me. And we get to meet each other. Through you, your ancestors have been represented on this particular land. So that door was forced open. They got the remains through it, created the door called a door of return, meaning all the Africans there. Time has come for us to come back home. And so they had them buried on the 31st of July, 1998. The next day marked the very first time we celebrated emancipation right here in Ghana. For the past 25 years, this year will be 26 years since we started celebrating it. 2019 was the 400 years of African resilience. We celebrated it as the year of return. The Prime Minister of Barbados, Her Excellency Mia Hammond, came back home with remains of her ancestors excavated and exhumed from a mass graveyard, flown into this land to be buried here so that their souls could find peace on their own land, connect with the motherland, and find their peace that they need and rest. That's how come we have these three graves here. Around the graves are ashes of relatives. If you find yourself here and you have the ashes in either a neck piece or something close by, We allow you in there to sprinkle it all around, putting the spirit back to the soil of Africa and allowing them to rest. That's how come we have this thing. On the walls, we have so many portraits. We call them the emancipators or freedom fighters. We have Malcolm S. Nani, Harriet Tubman, Sojourner Truth, Martin Luther King Jr., Frederick Douglass, Emmanuel, aka the Sweet Peter, Marcus Garvey, King Bruce. We have Nathaniel Turner. We have also Osagyefo Kwame Nkrumah, W.B. Du Bois, Booker T. Washington, and the likes. These are all freedom fighters, civil rights activists who gave us the life that we are enjoying today. And that's why we have them all right here. We shall be taking the walk to the river where they took their last ever bath. So please come with me in this direction. Yes, please, you can go take the pictures and we go to the river. Also known as the last bar. There are two different rivers that flow through this particular premise or particular site. There are two rivers. The river on my right hand side comes from this same community, flowing from the mountain gently, connecting with the other one. We call it Inonkonyo, meaning the slaves river. Our ancestors were not allowed to go to the far end of the river because that part flows too fast, and that part is called Ama Emisa Ochi. Ochi means something that could grab you. Based on the fact that it flows too fast, the captors never allowed the ancestors to go to that side. Thinking that when the ancestors go there, they will get washed away and they will lose everything. They didn't want them to go there. They kept them away from that road, brought them to this side. In chains and shackles with a round metal ball around their ankles, serving as an anchor to hold them still, preventing them from escaping. While they were down there, the wrist shackles were holding them still. How do you expect these people to clean themselves? So the ancestors wanted to clean themselves by helping. So I could help you. You help the next person. You repeat until everyone gets cleansed. They saw them doing that and they thought they were trying to console each other or probably thinking of freeing themselves to escape. So they got them separated. After separation, they went ahead, cut the bamboo. Long enough with the leaves of these bamboos, they used it as a form of grass to wash them and gave them bruises and cuts all over their body. After they were done, they pulled them up. Got them lined up here. Allow them to get dried. After they got dried, they apply shea butter or palm kernel oil on their skins to make them look presentable and attractive for the buyers to come here to pick. Those buyers who came here were with a very long handled tool. The branding tools were left in the fire. As it's turning hot red, they will go ahead to pick whoever they want to pick, pay for the pest, and bring you to the tree, chain you to it before branding your back, your chest, your shoulder, your forearms, from the waistline upwards. It's all there. They can decide where to brand you. After branding, they took them on a 70 to 80 kilometers walk to the dungeon. Those who were left in the chains were classified useless commodities. Not a single person in the chain saw the next daylight. Every single one of them was shot. They killed all of them. Dumped their bodies all around, left them to rot. It was nature that had the place covered. I call it the bamboo slave dumping site. Others call it the bamboo slave cemetery. I don't like the word cemetery because they were never properly buried. So I can never call it a cemetery. They have their remains buried by nature. We are here now and we are not here as enslaved people. Our ancestors who were enslaved took their last breath of life. The children, the descendants of these ancestors, have returned back to their roots, back to their motherland. And so we shall take a first batch of return on behalf of the entire family. So we will go down there. If you want to take the shoes off to walk in there, you are allowed. If not, you can go down, get the water touching your body, sprinkling it all over, classifying or signifying that you have taken your first bath and washing away this. Usually, when I step in there, I do my hands first, stating that may my hands be cleansed, so that whatever I will use these hands to touch from today onward to bring benefit to me and those who surround me. My ears need to be cleansed just in case when the ancestors come in spirit closer to me and they whisper into my ears, I should be able to hear them loud and clear. Their messages need to be clearer. When they show me the signs and directions, I should be able to see it. Walk on the directions with my clean feet. Then I wipe my mouth, stating that whenever they speak to me, I should be bold to speak out the messages that they deliver through me. That's what I do down there. So please, if you will come with me.